Sue just came up and asked me about, I don't really get it yet. And my answer to her was, it's not about getting it. It's about seeking it.
Ready to get?
I'm ready to go.
Right. Today we're chatting with Patricia Cori for the second time after having done her DNA activation course yesterday.
So, when you imagine what is this DNA activation all about, it is not about saying, okay, great universe, send down a beam. It's all yours. We've got it. It's 95% of junk that is not junk at all. It's just simply waiting for instructions. Because we are returning to 12-stranded consciousness in this evolutionary process we're in.
I am dedicated to helping people become fearless. That's the first step. And so when they come to do my workshops, they imagine, visualize this being a process of enormous transformation, which it often pretty much is for people. From an esoteric point of view, the third eye opening, lights, cameras, action, huge, immense, giant steps. And it can be. But I begin, much to surprise of some people, with the request that they dedicate to letting go of fear. And some of them look at me like, you must be kidding. I've got an 8-hour session here, and I want it gone forever. I don't want to go through exercises. I want to make a revolution here. So the first thing that has to go is fear. So we look at fear, because this is that lower stuff. We've all carried it around. It's got to go. Because with it, you're playing games with your mind if you think you're going to open your third eye. It's all connected. We have a tendency in our circles of light to talk about opening the chakra crown, open up the crown, open up the third eye, open up the heart. And then they go down and you look at rage and fear and survival and all of these unresolved aspects of our being. We call them the lower chakras. And usually people, they say that's lower chakra stuff. Guess what? We need the entire chakra system flowing. It's a musical instrument. It's the entire electromagnetic spectrum. It all has to flow. So let's look at it. What's blocking it? So where are those blockages? Well, it just so coincidentally happens that they correspond exactly to those places where the government keeps pushing the envelope. Financial systems are breaking down. Mastodonian sexual imprinting for animalistic throwaway sex, violent sex. You know, I hate to sound like an old bag, because I was in the sexual revolution back in the early 70s. But violent throwaway sex it's weird. It's not good. And people are hypnotized and drugged on it. When you hear about people going into clubs and having sessions in the bathroom with 5, 10 people, stoned out on whatever they're stoned out on, this is not good. I really think that this is really taking people away from themselves. And this is happening everywhere. And the kids are getting younger and younger with sex and with rape and all this very low stuff. And of course, power. People feeling disempowered and hopeless against the government, the reptilians, the financial situation, all of it. So I want people to look at it and bring it up. And guess what they say? When I ask, what is your real fear? The predominant fear is not being good enough, not being loved. And I think, how bad is that? How sad is that? Where did we go wrong, where we stopped believing that we were lovable? Where? Television, media. You're never thin enough. You're never rich enough. You're never cool enough. You're never smart enough. You're just not enough. Because if you are, you can't be marketed. You can't be marketed into buying product. So it's time for us to let go of all those fears And by letting go of them, understanding, as I said yesterday, guess what? You may not find your partner this lifetime. You may not have success in a successful career. Then what? What are you going to do with this day, with this life? People need to deal with their personal fear so that they can then face all of the garbage that's coming at us, and face that fear. To then get on to, okay, now that that's cleared out, that I've at least looked at it, now let's talk about what I want to do, focused intention, what I want to do with the heart, what I want to be as a galactic human being, and how I perceive what I can be as an illuminated human being.
And so one of the questions that comes up all the time is, well, if it's going to be a process of the earth anyway, why do we have to come to these workshops and do it? And the answer is we don't. We don't have to, but we can. We can focus our consciousness and intend that we accelerate this process, and if we can, by cracky legs. And that's why we're here. We want to focus our minds, fine-tune our conscious, focused intention to call these bits back, to help them remember what they're there for.
And now, I truly believe that we are capable with focused intention to start to call back those pieces of DNA that are floating around out there in nuclear space, which is within us, calling them back into line. Like the Pied Piper. Do you remember what you were designed to do? Come on home. And that Pied Piper is a light of light. And that beam of light comes from the absolute quintessential focused intention. And that's what I'm doing in the workshops.
So we've completed DNA activation level 1, which is obviously illuminating a third strand of DNA.
Did you get it?
I feel it. I'm very balanced today,
Good.
and perceptive awareness is quite heightened, which I think I'm looking for what evolution and growth it brings within.
It continues to happen.
Yes, I'm aware of this. I'm realising it as I'm going on, because I've understood that is a process, not something that's instant.
The Sirians say that the most important leap in consciousness that we're going to have is re-establishing that third strand of light within the nuclear fabric of our being, where the DNA is housed. Because with that third beam, we create triangulation within the cell, a triangulation of light. And that is why I've got this symbol, which you've admired in the past, which is the tetrahedral form. Imagine that this would be a two-dimensional representation of the tetrahedron, which would, if you drew the center out, would be a three-sided pyramid with a base. Okay? They explain that once you receive that third strand and you're able to anchor it, you create, for the first time, a celestial form within the DNA itself. Whereas the double helix is the perpetuation of duality. The nature of the double helix is polar.
The first time in any kind of geometry where you have form is the triangle. So if you look at Euclidean geometry, you have a point. When you have 2 points, you have a line. And what is the energy of the line? If you have a point here and a point here. Duality. Thank you, exactly. It's total duality. Because it is utterly unstable, because a line, 2 points are perpetually seeking balance, right? Think of a seesaw or teeter-totter. That it's constantly seeking to find balance, but it's not the natural state of a line to be balanced. Oh, and it's very interesting, therefore, that our DNA is double-stranded. It is, dig this, polarity coded right into us. At the DNA level. Do you understand this? By taking us down to 2 strands of DNA, we have been programmed, coded into extreme polarity. Because the nature of the DNA is this opposition all the time. You've got one energy system coming in from the heavens and one coming up from the earth. And did you know that that's how chakras are formed?
Yeah.
You've got the Ida, you've got the Pingala energy channels. One is electric, one is magnetic. Where they come in, chakra, chakra. Did you know that?
Yeah.
So cool. It's the coolest. It's much more simple than we think it is when you really get down to it. That's what the chakras are. They're crossing stations for these energy channels. I love it. Guess what? In the middle of all this medical science gibberish about junk, they admit that they don't know what the pineal gland does. You know this?
Yeah.
Well, we still don't know exactly the function of the hypothalamus. Well, when are you going to figure it out? You're operating on it, but you don't know what it is? The pineal gland in human beings has been reduced to the size of a pea. It's a little itty bitty, teeny weeny gland, which used to be the size of a pine cone, well, a little one. When all the DNA was attached, when all the DNA was illuminated, and all these filaments were plugged in, the hypothalamus was functioning as a lighthouse. Still is, but it's weak. The third eye is fully activated because all of the DNA is plugged in, activated, working. And so what they don't understand is because when this stuff was detached and scattered, it's like imagine a light that just goes and dims. And we are intent upon raising it back up to its full potential. So the Sirians say that the first gigantic step for us is this 3rd strand.
What do I think about the Norwegian spiral? First of all, there are a number of people in our circles talking about how it's a harp beam and there's a harp location near that spot. And I read something from an author that I'd rather not name because I don't want to be impolite. That there's a harp station near where the Nobel Prizes were given, and this beam was to create an illusion of an extraterrestrial presence, glowing aura around President Obama receiving the Peace Award. I think that's pushing it just a little. Let's not get so complicated. It could very well be that this is the beginning of the veil coming down. It's interesting that the Indians, the Hopi talk about the Kachina, the star, the blue Kachina star, being the absolute sign of our entrance into the 212 shift. And I think that we should keep our minds open and consider this may very well be a positive sign.
Yeah.
For one thing, we need to look at the fact that a lot of the things that are happening are waking people up. To even consider such a phenomenon is a wake-up. So even if it is an ill-intended activity or manifestation, it's still got people thinking about what is going on, lifting their heads from the streets and the shopping malls and saying, what is this in the sky? And by the nature of that, I think it's positive.
Crop circles. You said yesterday that the amount of crop circles, particularly last summer, there was just a large amount, even a circle showing up in sand formations in Iraq, all sorts of things all over the show, formations on a large scale which are geometrically perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You've been saying that they are a precursor to what's going to happen in the sky.
Yes.
Is that a coincidence that we've seen so many of these formations recently?
I think it's interesting because I have been telling people now for months that the councils say the crop circles are precursors to lights circles in the sky, and that the alien pronouncement will not be squadrons of military formation. I like to do dome, 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 racing through the skies, but rather dancing formations spirals, geometry, cosmometry. That is the language of the universe. And that's what crop circles are. If we have to find a universal language in potentially millions of civilizations, who knows how many, what would be the common denominator? Please don't think English, because I'll slit my throat.
No, certainly
Number.
not.
If we think about the formation of life, creation, number is always the basis of everything. So it only makes sense that number and ratio would be the communication method, right? It would be all intelligence and all intelligent life would have to understand the intelligence in patterns of numbers. So if you can't write some alien language system, hoping to how that would be deciphered, it could take, I can't even imagine. It would definitely not come with the Rosetta Stone, right? But number and vibration and geometry, patterns, this the human mind can discern. So it's very interesting that the crop circles give us all this sacred geometry, and that the formation that we saw in Norway is a logarithmic spiral. I find that very interesting. And I just don't get negative out of this. Call me a perpetual optimist.
Good. Well, your positive attitude is very inspiring to a lot of people out there who, unfortunately, may have woken up but are waking up in fear.
That's right. That's what we've got to be careful of. Because in the flood of information that's coming out, and I myself have brought through some pretty intense information about the dark side and what they're up to, we can't become so embroiled in the conspiracy, evil darkness that we forget that we're supposed to be light workers out here, and we're getting magnetized to that dark information. And is that really light working? So great, we accumulate all the information, but we become hypnotized. This is what I see happening. A lot of us are becoming hypnotized to the information, right? And when that happens, they are doing their dark work, and we are not doing the light work. If all we do is acquire it and we know it, for example, back when the Sirian Revelations came out, it was conspiracy. But it ain't. Now it's out. They feel so empowered. They don't have to hide anything. I do not want to perpetrate that information, perpetuate that information. And I really feel it's time for people to understand. Great, so that's what's happening. We've got it. We've got the names. They don't matter anyway. Now, how are we going to shine the light into those dark corners? This is our mission on planet Earth.
Have you ever had your life threatened, or have you ever been approached by the CIA?
Yes.
Please do tell.
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me to elaborate that. Well, you do ask those great questions. Yes, I have been approached, and it has been very sweet. The question was, how did I hear these messages?
So they actually came to you after having read your book?
Yes.
Which one specifically?
No More Secrets, No More Lies. That was the
Okay.
cruncher. And it was very friendly. We love your books. We'd like to talk to you. Could we meet? And during the meeting, I said, why exactly are we having this meeting? And you can see me a little bit uncomfortable with this question. Needless to say. There were two people. And he said, we just want to know how you hear this. How do you hear it? When do you hear it? What does it sound like? Does it sound like a radio? And I said, what are you worried about? Do you think I'm tapping into some sort of military channel or something? And he said, no, we love it. We love the idea that you can perceive other dimensional information, that you can make the contact. And I just love to do it myself, and I'm just dying to know how you do it. And I said, well, you do it in the love zone, and you're not in it. What do you do anyway? Because I knew that he was a military, because we were in the meeting point. He told me to look for military plates on the car. I said, what do you do anyway? And he showed me his badge, and he was in the CIA. He said, but we don't want you to be paranoid. And I said, I'm not paranoid. He said, because there are good people also in the military. And I said, yeah, He said, we do a lot of good work there. And I said, mm-hmm. I said, is something about military equals war, equals death and destruction, equals good work that I'm having a little trouble with. And didn't last long in the luncheon, which I made sure that he paid for.
Good for you. I hope you had champagne.
And I've had, other little signs. But this goes with the territory. You have to stand up. And I do.
Good for you.
And I loved it in the last interview when you said, I know that joy. When I said that it's a lot of sacrifice and it can be dangerous, or whatever the word I used was, but the joy is immense, and you said, yes, we know that joy. So you too know what it means to stand up for what you believe in.
Yes.
And speak your truth fearlessly.
Indeed.
And I do also believe that even the guys in the shadow are moved by what we're doing. I really don't believe they're all out to get us. And I think that they are looking, and some of them are laying down their guns. This happened in the Vietnam War days. Hate to date myself again, but back when I was protesting the war, we went up on campus, we went up to your ones with the rifles and said, make love, not war. We were very cute girls. And some of them they were the ROTC guys. Some of them laid down their rifles. So I don't think we need to chastise and loathe all of the guys that are doing what they believe is right. Some of them believe they're doing what's right for the government, for the world. And I think we can the force of light is so bright that even they can be affected by what we bring forward. We have to stay in our truth. We have to have respect, but we cannot deny how things are unfolding. We cannot water it down so that we protect ourselves against whatever.
Organizations that are working separately. They all have to be under one umbrella, or we're not going to be able to do this. It's too fractionalized. These guys have a central unit. 2,000, let's call them dark ones, running the show, commanding how they want things to unfold on this planet. And we've got all these factions, fracture everywhere. Even in our little groups, we've got ego and, well, I really don't want to tell you that because she's my client and all this foolishness. It's got to go. So we've got to band together, and we need people in every community, in every country with the courage, there's the word, the courage to stand up. Oops, that's where we lose a few people, but Patricia, they'll put you in jail. I want you to remember something that I like to quote, and that is the movie Gandhi. How many of you saw it? What a movie. Do you remember the scene where he is refusing to carry the national ID card imposed on the Indians? And they're beating him to death. And his peers say, Gandhi, they will kill you. Do it, take it. And he says, with his little bloody arm, they can break my bones. They can break my back, but they cannot break my spirit. And his arm goes up on that flame and he throws the card into the fire. You may be called to be that brave, and only you can answer that question. Never underestimate the power of the human spirit. That's my message. And sometime in this unfolding of reality that we're in, you might have to get out of your comfort zone, where nobody gets ruffled and everybody's quite okay with it. The neighbors don't know that you are a new age hippie. And life is just fine. Some of us are brazen warriors, but not everybody has that mission, and it's okay. But somewhere along your path, you're going to have to stand up for what you believe in. Otherwise, you're a con.
We know who these players are, and we know what's going on. What we need to know is what we're going to do to stop it. Will they come to our side? I think what we've got to get to is where there are no more sides.
Yeah.
And one way we're going to do that is when we have ET acknowledgement. Because when this occurs, it's going to be Earthlings Unite. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. Having this final, I don't want to say showdown because that sounds negative, but let's say final acknowledgement and communication. Even the funky people, violent people, cranky, unhappy people, warriors, soldiers, are going to be facing a new paradigm. That is human beings confronting whatever that is. And there will be a new brotherhood, sisterhood of humanity by the nature of the fact that we are now, instead of hating each other, dealing with, are we going to fear and hate the aliens? Or is this a potential to completely shift the human experience? And I believe it is. And I believe we will. Will the darkest ones like this? Maybe not. But they've got their underground bunkers. They can go hang out underground.
Or Plan B Mars bases.
Or Plan B Mars or moon bases. Or who knows where else bases.
What is the ascension process? And, are we going to notice it? And if so, is it going to be a sudden thing?
It's a pretty complicated subject because we have a lot of expectation about this and so much misinformation and a lot of hypothesis because who knows really. But what I like to talk to people about is the understanding of how we exist. Oh, we're not moving into another place, we are the other place. And that the ascension process for individuals, is this really that we're going to leap into another locale? Or is it that we are going to shift our awareness from our awareness as three-dimensional beings to our awareness in myriad other realities where we also exist simultaneously? So, yesterday I used the example of the Michio Kaku, who is someone I really respect, talking about the multiverse of bubbling universes perpetually bubbling forward like a jacuzzi bubble bath. And that each film of each bubble would be a multiverse. And that each multiverse would contain, on the film alone of the bubble, universes, myriad, thousands, millions, trillions of universes. And within these would be millions of galaxies. To get down further and further, solar system stars, shrinking down to little humans, which would be little cells in these experiences. And how we, by nature of the fact that light reflects, exist in every bubble, as a reflection of that place, that one bubble. It's so beyond our comprehension that it's kind of spooky. But it's really exciting. First of all, as Kaku said, on those places where you've got a bubbling up of bubbles, you have that connecting wall or that film where you are in a twin universe or twin multiverse. And so you exist in that one as well. And the question is, that's going to drive us all crazy, philosophers, scientists, New Age metaphysicians like us, is where is the basis of your existence? Where is the primal reality? We think it's here because at the moment we're holding focus in the density of 3D. But the Sirians say, actually, you're just focused on the illusion. You exist in all these other bubbles. What is the reflection? It's like, what is the dream? The waking state or the dream state? We call it the dream state, but in the dream state, do we call it the dream state? No. So we are looking at a humongous shift in our perception of reality. And I think that ascension is very much the process of shifting our consciousness out of this dense illusion, this visual field of light and shadow, and becoming more focused in a higher frequency where there is not so much visual illusion, the light spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum, but rather an incredible field of light. And we move away from this. Quite honestly, we'll still be existing in this as well. I was going to add that, of course, the Sirian teachings talk about how the earth is going to move into another dimension as well. And this is another whole conversation. Do we want to have that one too?
Go for it.
Okay. According to this information from the Sirians, every time when you interview me and you ask some of these questions, I just know we're going to go for a ride. When we move into this, through this process of our sun moving through its own astral cords, it's pretty just hard to imagine such a thing. But it really is so simple. We do it. Why couldn't a sun, a light, be a conscious being, and it too goes into its astral state when it dreams, when it astral journeys? And it is now ready to pass on. We could call it the death of the sun. We could call it the ascension of the sun. The council say it's the ascension of the sun. It is done with density, and it is moving on to a higher reality as well. So off we go. The sun goes through its own astral cords, which the scientists until now have called a black hole. But scientists are starting to admit that they only know physics from the Earth perspective, and they haven't got it right. It's not a black hole. It's an astral cord where energy exits from the density, and that's where we're going. And it's going to be faster than the speed of light. I'm laughing because I'm imagining someone hearing this, someone listening to this interview saying, "What is she saying?" Moving faster than the speed of light, scientists now admit is a reality, a potential reality. The Sirians have been saying it for 10 years since I've been in touch with them, that this may sound unrealistic to you, but there's every kind of speed faster than light. Light is slow from our perspective. Can you imagine? And that we're going to move through this cord, and it's going to be faster than the speed of light. So what do you think it will be like?
Phew. Well, I'm wondering if it's going to be a massive change on our bodies. I mean, how are we going to feel it? Is it going to be something that blows us away? I mean...
Well, I think that there's a lot of credence in the idea that what we're going to be doing is shifting our consciousness to that point that where we simultaneously exist. On the time-space continuum, or wherever that simultaneous reality exists, we just pop into that one. Because I think we pop in and out of these realities all the time. And that instead of past lives or future lives, we exist everywhere. We exist in thousands of millions, who knows, realities, where different probable realities take place. And that rather than these being lines, past lives, where many of us now are getting influenced because we seem to remember something about Egypt or Atlantis or whatever, perhaps we're just popping in for a minute, going, oh yes, this is where I held resonance, where my focus was then. The human mind is so immense. Maybe we're just, there is none of it, it's all in the cell. That's pretty spooky. Maybe all of what we perceive is right there down in the DNA, playing movies for us.
Interesting perspective.
Yeah. It gets hard to sleep sometimes when your mind is just racing around like this. But it's so delightful that we are delightful. It's so wonderful that we are free to really explore human consciousness without chains, without limitation now. And so much information is flowing along the highway that we are able to go deep, so deep.
Oh, great ocean wave. Oh, flowing breeze. Oh, great palm tree. Oh, nature. Oh, sand. Oh, it's only 2 o'clock. Oh, Oh, what am I going to do this evening after the sun goes down? Oh, moon. Oh, starlight. Oh, day one, ending. Oh, day two, same tree. Beautiful water, love the dolphins. Day four, when are they going to come and get me off of this island already so I can get back to life? Don't you know that this is true? Think about it. The truth is, the whole paradigm about paradise is a description of, well, the snake brings the two stayed energies of male-female that are not interacting dynamically. Energy over here and magnetism over here. And remember that the Bible says that the apple is from the tree of life, or wisdom. Truth. What is it?
All three in different
All three.
texts. Yes.
Clue number 1, 2, 3. The snake supposedly converts into the devil, but is it? If Eve didn't go, nice apple, would there have been creation in the mythical sense? Isn't the apple the spark? It's the spark, it's the catalyst, right? No apple, no procreation, no nothing except sitting around contemplating the tree. Aren't we at our best? Not when we're lying around being in that idyllic idea of peaceful surrender. We strive for it, but we're rarely in it because we're in this dimension. And this dimension is a workplace. And what do we work on? Issues. And if we don't have them, we create them to have, read my lips, something to do. Think about it. When are you really at your best? Is it really when you're lying around being all mellow after sex, for example? For some people. That's really not it. Think about your greatest moments in life. Isn't it when you're problem solving, when you're pushing yourself against the wall, challenging the dogma, going for the gusto, breaking paradigms, breaking records? This takes work. And if you don't have these things in your life, you create them. We get bored, don't we? We get bored, so we create obstruction to solve. That's the nature of this dimension. So yeah, that's a lot to chew when you say, my husband left me for a 12-year-old, or my house burned down. It's easy for you to say, but I suggest that it's the rebuilding the house that is the greatest moment. It's getting over the suffering and then saying, okay, we'll just leave it. That is the greatness of humanity. It is the nature of life to pick yourself up and rebuild. And that is the power, and that is the glory. I love it. I love the challenge to rise higher. And so do you. Don't be fooled. So do you. This is the nature of human spirit. And it's magnificent. Know your power.
I think infinite love being the only reality for some people is a difficult concept to wrap their heads around when they don't understand how darkness contributes to finding that infinite love.
You either believe in God or spirit or the prime creator, or you don't. If you do, God really messes us up because it gets all that religious implication and people are just nuts over the whole religious bag, and I'm not into it. So I like to talk about prime creation. And for me that is the prime mover, the absolute intelligence, which I like to think of as the great architect or the great mathematician. I believe in all that is, ever was, and ever will be, But there has got to be some sort of divine plan here, because I see it all in numbers and the meticulous. I mean, we get into sacred geometry and we're just all of glitter with numerology, but you get down to the essential aspect of reality, that at the molecular level, at the subatomic level, at the atomic level, you put together two atoms of what is water? H2O. One hydrogen, what is it? Oxygen? One hydrogen, two oxygen, blam, you've got an ocean. I mean, it is really, there has to be a plan or a divine intelligence. If you believe in that divine intelligence, or let's call it prime creator, I love that term, then by the nature of that, which would be the ultimate wisdom, the ultimate light, you've got to come to terms with the fact that the darkness exists within it. Because you can't get away with there's the ultimate goodness and light, and then there's a completely separate reality, which is the ultimate darkness. It can't be ultimate if there's a separate reality. It either is the entirety of creation or it isn't. So I really believe that it is, and that the darkness exists because without it, there's no free will. There's nothing to do. Great. So there's this massive, wonderful, incredible light. What is the purpose of any kind of I am awareness? I think we break away from that we're all co-creators, we're all a spark of God, light, creation. And we leap away to experience I am experience and plunge down deep into the darkest crevasse of difficulty to know it and to bring back that wisdom to source. And that the whole time of this journey, returning back up, is filled with every opportunity of free will to choose between these polar opposites. Even the darkest ones, which we have been once, are a spark of light. So is it a question of how evil something can be, or how new it is on that spiral? If you understand that, and the councils say, even you, as much as we love to think of ourselves as light beings, even you, every one of you, has at one time drunk of the dark wine on your long journey back. I really love that. And if we acknowledge that, we too have been at times, at some point, working for darkness, we so much more appreciate that we found our way out, returning home.
Indeed.
And that's how we forgive the reptilians.
So, I want to talk a little bit about the reptilians.
Oh, what a coincidence.
Then will they come out? Do you know any of them?
Let's see, have I had a reptilian for lunch?
It's good as long as they said you for lunch.
That's also true. I think that there's just too much reptilian conversation going on. People are getting so paranoid that anytime you run into a character who's got some bad personality traits, we immediately classify him as a reptilian personality. And I'm getting a little bored with the whole thing. I think that when we talk about the real reptilians, the ones that we are concerned with, they are in hiding. They don't come out, as I think I said this last time. They don't come out. They've got their circuit. And they walk to a different drummer. We have to be concerned about them from the point of view that they are orchestrating the one world order, and by nature of that orchestration, they are throwing the planet into as much chaos as possible. But I think we should be grateful to them. Why, Patricia? You must be thinking. Yeah? I think that even these outrageous things that are coming down are part of our process to get ready for contact, to become galactic citizens. And that we bring this information of what they've tried to do to this planet to the table. And that even though it's difficult for us now, when we're sitting at the table of the Galactic Federation, we will be all the greater for having risen above them. And so, bring it on. We can do it. We can handle it. We can. we are.
What is the thing that do you think humanity needs to focus on for the next few coming years? We very much get the impression from a lot of people we speak to that, more contrasting views. Jordan Maxwell seems to think that the light at the end of the tunnel is an oncoming train. People like David Icke and Bill Ryan are ever the optimists, and as are you. But obviously we've got a tough time ahead. It's going to get worse before it gets better.
Who said? We've got to watch out for this language. Why does it have to get worse before it gets better?
It doesn't.
It does not. We've been programmed to believe it has to get worse before it's going to get better. Maybe it doesn't. I don't intend to suffer 1 minute. The planet is out of balance because the human race is out of balance. So by the nature of that, I'm interested in seeing how this will rectify itself. Because I think nature knows what it's doing. I.e., there is so much decline in the male. Sorry guys, don't get nerve. There are so many less male children being born on the planet. There are countries that haven't seen male births for a while. Like in Iceland, where they're eating mass quantities of whale meat. There are villages where there have been no male births for decades. Why? Because there's so much female estrogen hormone in some of the toxic substances that the whales are ingesting that it's flipping the chromosomal patterns. And I'm thinking, this is pretty darn funky. But on the other hand, wow. Isn't it interesting that nature itself, even if it's because mankind is polluting these waters, nonetheless, the result of this is a decline in male population, i.e. a decline in potential sperm, i.e. a decline in population. That's just interesting for us to pay attention to these little things. And I just really do believe that as much as we fret and get hysterical about all the things that are wrong, we need to start really talking about some of the most incredible things that are right. And one of them is, even though this hormonal imbalance is occurring, and it certainly is a representational of the toxic disharmony on the planet, nonetheless, it may very well be one of the factors that reduces the human population back into the appropriate balance for the Earth. Does that make sense?
Indeed.
It's kind of out there, but I think so.
And I think it's something we need to make people very aware of, is the conscious choice to move towards eating a non-flesh diet, a vegetarian diet, and the reasons behind that. Some people think it's just a hippie hoo-ha, love animals, Greenpeace and all that, but it's so much more, and I'd really like for you to give us that explanation of why.
Okay, well, first of all, how sad that people would think that loving animals is hippie hoo-ha.
Yeah.
People forget that we are animals, for starters, and gee willikers, I wonder if somebody's going to want to eat us.
Yeah.
There is so much to the vegetarian pursuit that I think is of the utmost importance now, and I try not to preach, but since you've asked. As you remember in the workshop yesterday, I bring it up because my concern is, here we are, ever intended upon raising our vibration, which we're going to be talking about today, raising our, activating DNA filaments, all this wonderful stuff, and daily ingesting dead animal flesh. So there's a lot to know about this. For starters, the body takes between 3 and 7 days to pass meat through the digestive system. We have how many miles of intestines? I think it's something outrageous, like 3 miles of intestines, and this massive dense substance has to pass through this incredible tube with all of its folds, and it's kind of funky. So inevitably, the longer it takes to pass, the more toxin you extract from the substance. Do you think there's a little toxin in meat? Well, we start with the fact that, as we all know, the animals are eating absolutely toxic substance, including dead animal flesh that has been processed into their food. And this is when mad cow first really broke out. They realized that that carcasses of animals that were even diseased and infected were reprocessed into the food. and then given back to the animals. Rule number one, you don't eat your own animal similar in the food chain, much less giving it to them with all this toxic junk in it. So these poor animals are, instead of eating grass, as they should be blessed to do, they are locked into these horrific industrial farms where they never see the light of day. It's just so too terribly horrifying. But from the pragmatic point of view, they never see the light of day. They have no natural life. They're fed this toxic stuff. And even if they're not eating toxic, rotten meat, which I assure you they are, they're eating chemically produced, sprayed, organic, genetically modified food. So you've got chemical pesticides, hormones, every kind of substance to make them get fast, quick, so that there can be more profit from them. Now, recently, I think I mentioned this yesterday, there was a story of during a check by the USDA. They were checking some of the animals in a farm, and they found one that had 700%, 700% more antibiotic levels in the blood than is permitted. So for people that are really intent upon living well, eating well, natural supplements, healthy food, etc., yeah, I don't think eating an overly hormonized, can we use a word like hormonized? I'll make it up. It's Pat Cori language. Overly intoxicated with hormones animal for their din-din. There's also the question of the rage of the animal, the fear. I personally don't want that in my body. I don't want to contribute to animal suffering, and I don't want to ingest it. Because as you know, when any living being is in a state of fear, it kicks in massive amounts of adrenaline. This is a natural phenomenon. That's why you hear about people who, at a moment of extreme crisis, their son is lying under a car and a woman can lift up a car. That adrenaline shoots into the system and creates all of this incredible muscle response into the muscle. So this adrenaline hormone is going into the tissue of the animal. And you eat that. So you're eating that chemical, you're eating all of that rage, you're ingesting all of that fear and suffering. I just don't think that's a very good idea. And I think we're fooling ourselves if we believe that we are evolving spirits and still ingesting all this meat. There's another question, very important one, about the waste products from all these cows. So if you look and if you explore any of the media that allows you to know this information, you will know that there are almost lakes of excrement in these big farmlands in Texas, lakes of cow excrement that they don't know what to do with. I don't want to be contributing to lakes of excrement. I don't want to be contributing to acres and acres of the Amazon being wiped out so that they can have grazing lands for cows. And I just think that we need to question what it's like eating animals. So I personally choose not to. And someone yesterday asked me, well, where do you draw the line? Because even plants have souls and have energy, and I agree with that. And I said, I draw the line at eating anything that has eyes. It might sound like a compromise, but I am a spiritual person, being having a human experience. We do have to eat something. So I don't eat anything with eyes. And if there would be a way to not eat plants, I probably wouldn't do that either. But as you can see, we've got to eat something. So I eat pasta.
Pasta.
Lots of pasta, which is so good for the hip line. But I don't feel that I'm adding and contributing to the suffering of animals.
Yeah. I want to give you an opportunity if you've got any one last message for humanity.
Oh boy. I think. God, I've got a number of them.
Please, give us them all.
Don't take life too seriously is one of my more frivolous messages.
It's important, though.
We're just losing our sense of humor here. And especially the light workers. What's happening? We're getting all heady here. We're not having as much fun as we're supposed to have. It's supposed to be fun. Okay, great. It's a learning process, but I didn't think that at the soul level I was just going to come in here and work. I intended to have a great time. Let's get back to that. Because in our circles, again, of light and spiritual people, it's even becoming sort of déclassé to talk about fun, to talk about laughter. We're too busy being spiritual to think about that. And I think one of the greatest experiences of spirituality is laughter. So have some fun here. Make life count. For God's sakes, when you do take that walk away from your body and you look back and go, wow, great trip. Or as they say in the dolphins in, did you see the movie The Hitchhiker to the Galaxy?
Yeah.
When the dolphins say, so long and thanks for all the fish. Yeah? Let's celebrate. I, for one, am going to have a great time through this. I don't think it's going to get more difficult, as you said earlier. I'm going to have fun and celebration, and I'm going to honor my soul intention to come through this process, to learn, to celebrate, and to grow. And this is what I wish for humanity. And that's what we can do. And on the way, let's make sure we do our best that all people can rise to the occasion and get out of this gloomy fear and reptilian obsession and get on with the process of making life worthy of our love and experience.
Any other messages?
So long, and thanks for all the fish.
Anybody else got any questions?
I have one. Yesterday.
I mean, a question after so long and thanks for all the fish?
We'll edit it in.
Absolutely. Yesterday you made a woman repeat a mantra, which I thought was very powerful, and I think it could be useful to some of the people watching this to kind of develop their own personal mantra.
Yeah.
Would you like to share yours with us?
Yes. My personal mantra is, and when I do it, I always sit up like this because I want the whole reverb to go right through the column, the chakra column. And I like to put my big superwoman seal on it. So I visualize myself like a sandwich board, you know? And it is, I do not intend to suffer one moment. Somebody said, that's kind of negative, there's a not in there. I go, it works for me. I do not intend to suffer one moment. And when people repeat this mantra, it just seems to trigger in them an understanding of how much time they waste worrying and suffering. How many hours in a day do you worry? This is what I was talking about earlier when we were talking about the reptilians and who are they and what are they going to do, and good God, if all we accomplish from learning so much about how these dudes operate is focus our entire lives on it, they've won. This is one of the reasons why I'm in optimism landia. I will not let them win with Patricia Cori. And I want that to get out to others so that they won't win with them either. And by God, we might just make a movement out of this.
Indeed.
So that's my mantra, and I stick to it. But it is really important for people to wake up in the morning and declare. One of them is, what am I going to do with this day? What's going to be special about this day? I do that every morning. First of all, I wake up every morning happy, and that's because I have gotten out of the grind of work. I have my spiritual work, I write the books, I channel books, but I don't have to commute into an office anymore and listen to some inane, insignificant work about marketing and public relations, which is what I used to do, which has no significance other than to perpetuate aimless spending and consumerism, and I don't want to be part of that. And so now I come down from the bedroom in the morning and I put on my drug, which is coffee, And when it starts to go pluck, 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 and I smell it, I love it. And I say, what am I going to do with this day? And I walk into my office, which is in my house, and I go, I'm in the office now. And I'm having a blast. I'm really having a blast. And so I like to also suggest to people, which is kind of on this track, that even the people that are losing their jobs have this opportunity. You have an opportunity when you lose the job to say, what am I going to do now? And I see people doing things like you. I see people doing things like, well, I always wanted to be a musician, but I always had to worry about making a living. I'm going to be a musician. Or I'm going to create a new community, whatever. I'm going to start a community vegetable patch. So in despair and in difficult times, we have opportunity. And the positive ones say, let me make this day special. And the not so positive ones are, why does this happen to me all the time? It's the all the time that gets them, of course. But I would like to also have people think about that. In difficulty is opportunity. And as I was saying yesterday in the event, in our workshop, we are our greatest. We are at our greatest when we are overcoming obstruction. That is the greatness of humanity. When we overcome obstacles and obstruction and rise to the occasion and look back and go, thank God that happened to get me here. And you're like that. And I love you for that.
Me too. Patricia Cori, thank you very much for your time today. It's been an honor and a pleasure to speak to you again.
Thank you.
And I hope we can do it again sometime soon.
We'll just keep doing it, and we'll just keep talking and talking until we get tired.
Absolutely. Lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sweetheart.
We're in.
I'm dedicated to helping people become fearless. That's the first step. And so when they come to do my workshops, they imagine, visualize this being a process of enormous transformation, which it often pretty much is for people. From an esoteric point of view, the third eye opening, lights, cameras, action, huge, immense, giant steps. And it can be. But I begin, much to surprise of some people, with the request that they dedicate to letting go of fear. And some of them look at me like, you must be kidding. I've got an 8-hour session here, and I want it gone forever. I don't want to go through exercises. I want to make a revolution here. So the first thing that has to go is fear. So we look at fear, because this is that lower stuff. We've all carried it around. It's got to go. Because with it, you're playing games with your mind if you think you're going to open your third eye. It's all connected. We have a tendency in our circles of light to talk about opening the chakra crown, open up the crown, open up the third eye, open up the heart. And then they go down and you look at rage and fear and survival and all of these unresolved aspects of our being. We call them the lower chakras. And usually people, what I want to be as a galactic human being and how I perceive what I can be as an illuminated human being.
And so one of the questions that comes up all the time is, well, if it's going to be a process of the earth anyway, why do we have to come to these workshops and do it? And the answer is we don't. We don't have to, but we can. We can focus our consciousness and intend that we accelerate this process. And if we can, by cracky legs. And that's why we're here. We want to focus our minds, fine-tune our conscious, focused intention to call these bits back, to help them remember what they're there for.
And now, I truly believe that we are capable with focused intention to start to call back those pieces of DNA that are floating around out there in nuclear space which is within us, calling them back into line. Like the Pied Piper. Do you remember what you were designed to do? Come on home. And that Pied Piper is a light of light. And that beam of light comes from the absolute quintessential focused intention. And that's what I'm doing in the workshops.
So we've completed DNA activation level 1, which is obviously illuminating a third strand of DNA.
Did you get it?
I feel
Sue just came up and asked me about, I don't really get it yet. And my answer to her was, it's not about getting it. It's about seeking it.
ready to get.
I'm ready to go.
Right. Today we're chatting with Patricia Cori for the second time after having done her DNA activation course yesterday.
So, when you imagine what is this DNA activation all about, it is not about saying, okay, great universe, send down a beam. It's all yours. We've got it. It's 95% of junk that is not junk at all. It's just simply waiting for instructions. Because we are returning to 12-stranded consciousness in this evolutionary process.
All of it. So I want people to look at it and bring it up. And guess what they say? When I ask, what is your real fear? The predominant fear is not being good enough, not being loved. And I think, how bad is that? How sad is that? Where did we go wrong? Where we stopped believing that we were lovable? Where? Television, media. You're never thin enough. You're never rich enough. You're never cool enough. You're never smart enough. You're just not enough. Because if you are, you can't be marketed. You can't be marketed into buying product. So it's time for us to let go of all those fears, and by letting go of them, understanding, as I said yesterday, guess what? You may not find your partner this lifetime. You may not have success in a successful career. Then what? What are you going to do with this day, with this life? People need to deal with their personal fear so that they can then face all of the garbage that's coming at us, and face that fear. To then get on to, okay, now that that's cleared out, that I've at least looked at it, now let's talk about what I want to do, focused intention, what I want to do with the heart. Well, they say that's lower chakra stuff. Guess what? We need the entire chakra system flowing. It's a musical instrument. It's the entire electromagnetic spectrum. It all has to flow. So let's look at it. What's blocking it? So where are those blockages? Well, it just so coincidentally happens that they correspond exactly to those places where the government keeps pushing the envelope. Financial systems are breaking down. Mastodonian sexual imprinting for animalistic throwaway sex, violent sex. You know, I hate to sound like an old bag, because I was in the sexual revolution back in the early 70s. But violent throwaway sex it's weird. It's not good. And people are hypnotized and drugged on it. When you hear about people going into clubs and having sessions in the bathroom with 5, 10 people, stoned out on whatever they're stoned out on, this is not good. I really think that this is really taking people away from themselves. And this is happening everywhere. And the kids are getting younger and younger with sex and with rape and all this very low stuff. And of course, power. People feeling disempowered and hopeless against the government, the reptilians, the financial situation.